There's more chairs being brought out, and I'm very flattered that you've shown up today. I think, is this already recording there? It's all good? Okay. So thanks to Bill Crouch for setting up the iPad so it'll be recorded. If people want to go and watch it on YouTube later. And thanks to Wayne for setting up the stuff that I can't do and will never be able to do. It's too complex. I'm going to go ahead and begin with a word of prayer. The Lord be with you.
Also with you.
Lord, speak to us on our days of rest and solitude, our days and times of renewal and relaxation. Give us confidence that you are working in us when we are not working at all. Give us faith to see that this world is big and it runs and operates with your guiding hand, not ours. Thank you for this day of rest and this day of renewal in your word, your Son, Jesus Christ, who has given his life for us. May the Spirit guide our thoughts and our minds today as we discuss sabbatical. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. I never had a sabbatical. I've never had to reflect on a sabbatical, and I've never had to talk to a big group of people about what sabbatical is and what it accomplishes. And so I hope that my thoughts are not too scattered today, that somebody will be able to follow along with what I'm trying to say. I struggled with this. 11 weeks is a long time to kind of depart the church and kind of be doing something different. And the temptation was, I think the initial temptation was for me to just do kind of a chronological, like it started May 20th and then May 21st was like this, all the way to the end. But I realized that I didn't, although I lived through it chronologically, like we all have no choice but to do with time, as I reflected, I did not reflect on it chronologically. And there were themes that kind of, I think, God kept bringing to the surface. So it's a little bit scattershot. I'm bouncing back and forth. I try not to make this just a travelogue, although I did a lot of traveling. That would be for another thing. This is for us, I'm hoping, to kind of reflect together as people of faith and as a congregation on what your first pastor sabbatical was like and what it entailed. As I wrote and I've shared with the congregation in publications and other places, I tried to frame everything going into this sabbatical with these 3 R words: rest, reconnect, and refocus. Just so I wasn't just bumbling through it, but I had kind of a way for God to put up pathways for me to think of this time. So there's the concept of sabbatical is at the very beginning of the Bible and creation. Of course, sabbatical comes from the same word as Sabbath, which is the Hebrew word for 7. On the 7th day, God rested. So 6 days of working, 1 day where God just refrained, and yet creation did not fall apart. It actually flourished as God took a break. And then part of the 10 Commandments, the 3rd commandment, at least in Lutheran numerical system, which is why I'm ingrained into my mind, the 3rd commandment, remember the Sabbath to keep it holy. But this is going to be a hallmark feature of God's people, Israel. They will be the only people who will stop what they're doing, stop working, at least a 7th of their time, and let creation do and be, and realize, kind of rewire themselves each time it happens, that life is not dependent on me and my productivity. It is on God, from where all blessings flow. And then, of course, in the New Testament, Jesus repeatedly takes time to move away from his own ministry. One of the parts of Mark's gospel. We're in Mark's gospel, and we preached on this. We had it in worship back in this late winter. It always catches me on, it just disturbs me. All of these people have come to Jesus for healing and for having demons cast out. They brought him all to the city where he's staying, Capernaum, and they're pressing in on him. He can't get away, and he leaves. He leaves them. I mean, for all we know, those people never got healed by Jesus in that way. Jesus himself pulled back and went to the hills. Jesus said to the disciples, "Come away to a deserted place all by yourselves and rest a while." For many were coming and going, and they had no leisure even to eat. And so this theme continues throughout. It's prevalent in Scripture. It's not something, it's novel. It's baked in. This was up in Fort Valley. A turtle was just crossing the street, and I just kind of thought, that's a sabbatical image if there ever was one, right? Just taking his time, right? I moved him away, but there were no cars. There's a really good book, I've read parts of it, not the whole thing, by Wayne Muller, Sabbath, Finding Rest, Renewal, and Delight in Our Busy Lives. Sabbath is a way of being in time when we remember who we are, what we know, and taste the gifts of spirit and eternity. So sometimes you just have to slow down. Very hard in our culture to do that. Another very famous book, well-read book, often quoted by a Jewish rabbi, Abraham Joshua Heschel. The book is just called The Sabbath. It's a tome. There is a realm of time where the goal is not to have, but to be. Not to own, but to give. Not to control, but to share. Not to subdue, but to be in accord. Life goes wrong when the control of space, the acquisition of things of space, becomes our sole concern. And so I tried to live into this. But when I came back, the first week I was back, I typed up just my personal reflections from Sabbatical, because I didn't want to forget. And this is my first sentences. I struggle with productivity and how it impacts my feelings of self-worth. It is hard for me to feel or be unproductive. Even creating this list was born of a deep internal need that Sabbatical not just be empty time, but rather a time where I grew in some way by actively doing and learning. Could I make it through one non-travel day of Sabbatical without making myself a to-do list? I'm not sure I achieved that goal. Another main part of Sabbatical is renewal, and I was on the same hike of the turtle, and I saw this image, and I thought, there's another Sabbatical image. It's an area where they had clear cut in order to cut down on forest fires. This is up in Fort Valley. But this tree was being renewed, even though it had been cut. It had these little branches. I thought, sometimes I feel like that cut tree, but God will bring new growth. This is also from Heschel. This is from Wayne Muller. Oops. If busyness can become a kind of violence, which Muller says it is, our busyness is actually violence to ourselves. We do not have to stretch our perception very far to see that Sabbath time, effortless, nourishing rest, can invite a healing of this violence. When we consecrate a time to listen to the still, small voices, we remember the root of inner wisdom that makes work fruitful. We remember from where we are most deeply nourished and see more clearly the shape and texture of the people and things before us. So I believe that this is what Sabbatical really provided me, a time to see the people and places before me as they really were, and not think of them as things I had to accomplish and do, but I still struggle. So, why this year? Why did I... Do y'all need a chair? No? Chairs? Okay. Why this year, 2024? Well, our sabbatical policy follows that kind of biblical model of 7 years. So every 7 years, and as it happened, 2024 was my 15th year at Epiphany. So it was time to do that. I would also say the additional stress of COVID times made it pertinent for me. 2020, as many of you, can you remember it, began a new era. And for those of us who were kind of trying to make decisions, a new term came about, decision fatigue. And I'm still kind of fatigued from that time. The congregation has changed. I remember being in the pulpit one of the first Sundays after we resumed in-person worship in 2020. We were the first Lutheran churches to do so. We were masked, we were socially distanced, we could sing, but we were worshiping in person. I remember being in the pulpit one Sunday and looking out, and 2/3 of the people in the pew, 2/3, because I counted, and I do know some math, 2/3 were people who had never been to Epiphany before the pandemic. They had watched us online. They were looking for a new church. I was like, this is like a wave. I mean, this is going to be completely different when everybody comes back. Oh, well, lastly, and I needed some healing. There were some scars. There were some wounds from that time. Don't need to delve into it, but I just needed to kind of step outside the system and not think about it and obsess about it for a while. Why 11 weeks? 12 weeks is what our, 3 months actually is what our policy require, or set up to. It just was a natural pause of the school calendar and church program year. I mean, I just figured summer things kind of go into a Sabbath mode anyway. And it was long enough to create time for true rest. So it wasn't just like unpacking a suitcase and coming right back. Chronologically speaking, it began in late May with a 3-day silent retreat by myself. I was up at Camp Caroline, or Caroline Forest Camp and Conference Center. When I got there, they had this little sign for me, which was like really cute because I've actually never spent the night there. But they say, welcome back. That made me feel really welcome there. It's in Fort Valley, Virginia. Has anybody, raise a hand, anybody ever been to Caroline Furnace? This is our Lutheran camp. It's a ministry of our synod and our congregation. We have children who go up there for camping every summer. It is gorgeous. Somebody said over here. It's in Fort Valley, Virginia, which is still to this day completely away from any cell signal. So that was nice. Then my family, the 5 of us, took a 3-week tour through Europe. This was if you know geography, this was our route. It was a 3,000 mile in a rental car. And many, many tales that we will tell for the rest of our lives from this trip. But we landed in Paris. We went south. We were there for a few days. We visited this town called Beaune. We were in the Swiss Alps for several days. Stopped in Lucerne. We spent a night in Liechtenstein. And we drove through the Tyrolean Alps to Salzburg, bypassed Munich, went up all the way up here to the former East Germany where I lived to see my friends. Stopping at Erfurt along the way, then over to Amsterdam, actually we're kind of just north of it in Edam, south to Bruges, and then to Paris to come home. And then I was 2 weeks in Colorado. One of those weeks was Colorado Springs with some friends, and then another week in Granby, which is kind of like right there, where the red dot is, for 2 weeks with family. Took a camping trip with Jasper, J-Dog, Grayson Highland State Park, Virginia, and then we went and stopped at Roaring Gap. That's for several days. And then I spent a week with my family, my side of the family, at Topsail Beach, North Topsail in North Carolina. So chronologically, that's how kind of, and there were some, I think I was at home total, in Richmond, total, for 12 days, the entire 11 weeks. Melinda can tell you, I do not do well by myself. One thing that Sabbatical proved to me is how much of an extrovert I am. Whoa! I cannot be by myself at home, especially when I run out of things to do. And we had this little app on our phone called Life 360. Does anybody have that? It kind of tells you where family members are. We got it when Claire started to drive. And I'm a habitual user of that because I'm like, when's Melinda coming home? And there were several days where I was on the front porch as she drove down the road because I could see her little car coming on the app. I just needed somebody. Okay, 3 things. Rest. What was the other one? Reconnect, refocus. We're going to start on rest first. Things that rest me are nature and travel. These things really renew me. They make me restful. And so you're going to see a lot of bird pictures. This is Camp Caroline Furnace. During the time I was up there, I did birding for them. I'm providing them with a kind of a catalog of the birds that I found during breeding season. But woke up at like 5 a.m. This is the lake up there. It's just gorgeous. It's peaceful. I was the only person on camp. Did some hiking. This is Duncan Knob. They have a crystal clear stream that runs through their property. It's called Passage Creek. It's just beautiful. It's a mountain stream. You catch trout in it. Here's some birds. I saw a prairie warbler. Prairie warbler, anyone? I know what that is? Scarlet tanager. This was just, man, it was amazing. I saw a mom and baby black vulture. Baby trying to get ready to fledge. The baby is, actually the immature one is here. When I was in the Rocky Mountains, I saw a life bird. That's a bird I've never seen before. It's called the American Dipper. I have dreamt about this bird. I wanted to see the American Dipper my whole life. It's a very strange bird. It's not too close. It's distantly related to a robin. It's just a little songbird, but it goes underwater. It eats larvae and little crayfish that it gets underwater. It actually is a robin, but it has the same kind of oil glands that a duck does, so it can go underwater and doesn't drown. So I just saw one, took 40 billion pictures of it. It's a Magnolia warbler, one of my faves. Saw this in Grayson Highlands among the Fraser fir. Touring South Carolina's campus, we saw, University of South Carolina, saw this Carolina Anole tiger moth on the camping trip. It's a red-crested potsherd that I saw next to the water tower in Lucerne. And this went on a hiking trip, and that's a timber rattler. It's about a 5-foot timber rattler that Jasper almost stepped on up in Shenandoah National Park. I thought it was cool. In the Rockies, I got real close to a snowshoe hare. I've seen countless cottontails. That's the kind of rabbit that lives here, but I've never seen a snowshoe hare. And it was just sitting there right by the trail as I passed by. I was able to get my camera out. You can see his feet stay the plumage of their winter coat because they camouflage. They change back and forth between white and brown. So I saw a lot of elk in the Rocky Mountain National Park. Something kind of sad, you see all these dead trees. They've already lost 40% of their Engelmann spruce. That's that tree that covers basically most of the Rockies. To bark beetle because of climate change. Yes, it's real. The winters aren't getting cold enough to kill off the bark beetle. And so the bark beetles never die enough in the winter. And I asked the park, so there's nothing they can do about it. They can't put pesticide out for the bark beetle or anything. It's just, we're talking the entire west half of the United States. And I asked the park ranger, I said, what is going to happen? He said, well, we figure in about 5 to 10 years there will be no evergreens here. So if you want to go see, you got to go now. And I said, what's going to happen? He said, well, there'll just be bare Rockies for probably 50 or 100 years until a new batch of trees, which will probably be aspen, will grow back in its place. So that was something that just kind of took my breath away. So you can see them called the dead. It's dead. This is middle of July, and it's basically gray and brown. Moose and his baby. Some more elk. Columbine, ground squirrel. Going along with nature, got to hike the North Face Trail in Mürren, Switzerland with Claire and Jasper, 4-mile trail. That was through all the wildflowers. cows with little bells on there, clanging around. It's fun. The little village we stayed in Switzerland was a working Swiss farm village. It was not really a tourist village. And there was a little sign that somebody had written and said, fresh cow milk, help yourself. And he actually just went into this farmer's house. Like you could just walk right in and open his fridge, like the farmer's fridge. And there was a little change box that said, leave a Swiss franc for milk, and they had also got cheese there. So I went and got, it had just been milked maybe like 2 hours before I got it. Delicious. Did some parasailing or paragliding over the Lauterbrunnen Valley, and it was a wonderful experience. Lasted about 30 minutes, just kind of gliding in silence over the valley there. Sorry, you can see. I love wildflowers. Constantly taking pictures of them. These are 12 of the species that I saw on that 1 4-mile hike. Did some hiking in Garden of the Gods when I was in Colorado. That's Pikes Peak right there. Hiked in Rocky Mountain National Park. This is the Ute Trail, which starts at about 12,000 feet and goes down to about 8,000. Hiked around Bear Lake at Rocky Mountain National Park. Crystal clear water. Those are the wildflowers of the Rockies I saw. Went to a rodeo, not really wildlife, but kind of. Went to my first rodeo, so now I can say, this isn't my first rodeo. I've been to a rodeo. Fascinating. It was a small town. It was not a tourist event. It was actually their town's rodeo where everybody practices these skills every Saturday and Friday night. So we saw a lot of people fall off horses. We saw a lot of calves get away from the calf roping. It was really good fun. Good American fun. Hiking at Grayson Highlands State Park. A beautiful day for that. Did see plenty of ponies. That's a hike up in the Fort Valley that I did on my own. I was the only person on this hike. It was an 8-mile hike, and I was the only person the entire time. It was kind of weird because it made me think about it. I was walking and I thought, there could be a bear. Right. And I said, well, what keeps bears away is noise. So I need to be loud. And I'm thinking, well, also what keeps bears away is other people's noise, usually. I haven't heard any other people's noise. I haven't seen any other people. And then I started thinking about if I ran across some scary people. But anyways, I made it out. So this is the only travel log experience. This is just some photos from our trip as a family through Western Europe. Here's the Eiffel Tower. We were there the week before the rings went up on it. Notre Dame still closed. The Sabbatical open. There's the palace and gardens at Versailles, just outside. Everything was getting ready for the Olympics, so it was kind of cool to see them building these venues. More Versailles. This is me touring Versailles, looking up, and it's a beautiful place. Went to Beaune, France. It's the capital of the wine region known as Burgundy, or the Côte d'Or, if you're a wine person. I had beef Burgundy there, and it was really good. Had a nice Burgundy wine. But just my family probably would put this at the top of their list as the place that they liked the most. In Beaune is one of the world's first hospices, the Hospice du Beaune, and it's a museum now. It's a perfectly preserved Renaissance architecture. I didn't put a picture up here, probably should have, but a wealthy landowner built this hospital in the 1400s, 1500s for people of the town. And when you walk in, it looks like a church. I mean, vaulted ceiling, there's an altar where they have communion, but where everybody would sit, where the pews would be, is actually hospital beds, like wooden hospital beds. And he wanted people who were in their last days of life to be able to worship like everybody else. And the doors led to the outside of the town, directly onto the square, so that whenever the town was celebrating a saint or something like Christmas, they could all take their parades right into where all of those sick people were, that they were not ostracized from the rest of society. It was a very moving museum to go to. It's the Lauterbrunnen Valley, so we made our way, drove into Switzerland. Beautiful place. Into Liechtenstein, where we saw a couple castles. That's Gutenberg Castle and Balzers, Liechtenstein. We crossed the Tyrolean Alps and went to Salzburg, Mozart's hometown. This is Erfurt, Germany. The first night that we stayed in Germany, we were here. I'd actually been to Erfurt before, like in 1991, right after the wall fell with my family. There was it just so happened, call it travel magic, things you don't plan. There was a street festival in Erfurt the weekend we were there. So like 20,000 extra people just enjoying, families running around, buying fried dough and drinking beer. It was just a lot of, the downside is I couldn't get like a nice picture of the cathedrals, but I kind of like having these booths. Stayed in the little town where I lived for a year called Gorn, population about 5,000. So we were in a farm, we were on a horse farm, a therapy horse farm that I found through Airbnb, where we stayed for several days. That was one morning I woke up and took a picture from the deck. Went to Magdeburg, which is the big city near where I used to live. It's the Magdeburg Cathedral. And I love this is a statue carved in. When you walk in the side door, they have these statues of, on one side is the 5 wise bridesmaids from Matthew 25, and the other side is the 5 foolish ones. You know, the ones that didn't bring enough oil for the wedding? And that's what you walk in, and this was one of the ones that was, she's the foolish one. It's like facepalm. Why didn't I bring more oil? Because they carved that in like the 1300s. We stayed in Edam, Netherlands, which is just north. It's on the canals, the reclaimed land part of Holland, in the Netherlands. Sally, your family is just from the Edam, Volendam, which is, These are the architecture of Edam is just really, really delightful. These little stair step houses, facades. We stayed in one not too different from that. Went to Kinderdijk, Netherlands, which is where it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, is where they preserved these windmills, which is how the Dutch got all the water back out to sea so that they could actually farm and live. We have a saying there that God created the world, the Dutch created Holland. Fascinating. Went to Amsterdam for a day. Saw the Van Gogh Museum. It was really nice. Bruges, Belgium, another fan fave. Flemish town in northern Belgium. Hiked to the top of this. I think it's 637 stairs. Jasper and I did it all the way to the top. You get to see the carillon as it works and chimes every day on the hour. And our last stop was Pierrefonds, France, just a castle that's there on the side of the road. So that was rest. Now I'm going to move to reconnect. This is a train station in Gomer, that little town I lived in 1997-98. I needed to see my German friends. We've just been so separated. We share Christmas cards every year and letters, but there's just something about seeing them. I lived with a guy named David. David's my exact same age. He now has a wife and a son who's the exact same age as our Claire. And Achim, David's father, who was a teacher at the school where I taught, has had a quadruple bypass surgery and a pacemaker put in the last 3 years. So I just felt like time was ticking. That's us in 1997. That's Achim and Karin, David's mom and dad. And that's my mom and dad. And last time I saw David was in 2002 when I came back from Cairo. I stopped over at their place. Their nickname for me was Dumbo. So there he is. That's in May 1998. We're on the back porch of Karin and Achim's house where they still live. patio. That's my grandfather and my grandmother. They came to see me there. And Achim is here, kind of in the shadows. And then this year. So we got Achim back here. This is David. I call him my German brother. Andreas is his younger brother, who was a student of mine. This is Sean, David's son. Sabrina had to leave. That's his wife. And then you know the rest. Oh, this is Andreas, Matteo, and Lincoln. So here we are, just hanging out, just having a really good time. In 1997, I went to Wittenberg. It was still not really completely shiny and new after the wall fell. And so I got to take the family this year. And you can tell they've made it into kind of like Luther Disney World. It's like, there's so many fun things. We're something for all ages in Wittenberg now. There's us in front of the Castle Church door in Wittenberg, where he nailed, or whatever he did to the 95 Theses. Apparently, he used like Scotch tape or something. But anyhow, they now have all the theses written in bronze, or brass, or whatever it is, just kind of as the door. You don't actually go in and out that door. It's just for photo ops. That's the interior of the church. It looks way better than when I was there in 1997. So back in Goldman, this was the church where I worshiped when I was there, 97, 98. It was decrepit. They had not had any repair work done since World War II. So the organ all of the bellows had been eaten by rats and mice, so they couldn't use the organ when I was there. The active congregation was about 10 people. The St. Trinitatis Kirche. I was really hoping I could go in. I became friends with the pastor back then, Karl Heinznickel, but I can't find if he's deceased or not, because that was a while back. This is my apartment that I lived in. I was in this apartment room right here, the Dachwohnung, which is like the penthouse. That side of it. No elevator. Walk up and go up here. So it's kind of cool to see where I used to live. Also part of the Reconnect was to be with what I call kind of my closest friends and colleagues, Jason, Travis, and their families. We do this every year, but definitely didn't want to leave it out, this sabbatical. Reconnect, that's our seminary graduation in 2003, and this is us with our spouses now. We get together every year a couple times, but we're going to a bar called Shame and Regret. A good place for us to bless. We were there to bless it. Anyway, and then these are now our families all together. So, in Travis and Tori's backyard. I think it's our 21st year we've gotten together. There's Laura and Claire and Jasper. Reconnect more with my own family. This is Margaret's side. We hiked around Bear Lake in Rocky Mountain National Park. Beautiful day. We did another hike the next day and went to the rodeo together. And just got to spend some time with them outside of the hustle and bustle. And then, of course, my family down at the beach. That's my sister, Catherine, and her husband, Steve, and their daughter, Morgan. They live in Asheville. And then my mom and my dad, who just got another good report from his cancer doctor this week that the tumors are not growing, and so we're giving God thanks for that. Enjoy time with him. And the most important thing was reconnecting with my family. Just the five of us. There were so many moments that I will treasure. This is in the Louvre. Melinda probably talking about how important the Mona Lisa is and how maybe one day Claire, Laura, Jasper will pose for a picture like that. This is just coming back from eating in Salzburg. Just kind of noticed them walking arm in arm. We mastered the metro just mundane moments like this mean so much for a family. Just to see it, can you get from point A to point B in a city that you don't know? And it was a lot of fun. I know, we're all on a device. But we're tired, and we're all on a device next to each other in Salzburg, doing what we need to do to replenish ourselves on a busy trip. In Liechtenstein, we stayed on the llama farm in a yurt. It made for a really fun night, but this yurt was probably actually the most high-tech place we stayed the entire trip. It doesn't look like it, but it had like Netflix in there, and it had Hulu, and all the things, and we watched Friends until like 1 a.m. And woke up the next morning and got to feed the llamas. Up in Gimmelwald on the side of the Alps, we went to eat one night, and there was a guitar on a piano, and it just says, "If you can play, please play. If you can't play, leave it alone." And, we asked her, I was like, "Is that sign for real?" And the proprietor said, "Yeah." So Claire got down, and she sang some songs, played some songs in this place, and here's Jasper filming her on his little tablet device. Claire got strep throat in Salzburg, and like kids, impeccable timing. We discovered this at like 5 p.m. on Friday. And so what are we going to do? I won't go into the long ordeal of it, but we did, Claire and I, probably the biggest bonding experience ever, father and daughter. We experienced European healthcare system, which is drastically different from what we're used to here. They did take care of us, but it was an interesting evening. I will say that. Fun fact: it doesn't matter what you claim you have when you walk in. If they suspect you are infected with anything, they're going to draw blood. And Claire had never had blood taken before, and so we're in there, and she's like, they said this lady comes in, and she's like, "Get ready to roll up your sleeve." And Claire's like, "What are they doing?" I said, "I think they're going to take your blood, but I don't understand why, because they already did a strep test." So I went and found the doctor, and I was like, I did all this in German, which it made me really feel proud of myself. And I was like, "Why are you taking my daughter's blood?" And he said, "We do it all the time. This is what we do. We want to see," Dr. Ward, "they want to see if the white blood cell count is elevated." So, okay, we'll do it. So I just said, "Claire, look at my eyes. Just look at my eyes. Just take your arm. You can do this. You can do this." She was a champ. I could write a book about this whole experience, but then they finally sent us to get penicillin at like 10:30 p.m. at one of 2 24-hour pharmacies in all of Salzburg. And it was way out on the edge of town. So I drove there, parked in kind of a sketchy area, and you walk up to this totally dark, there was a little vestibule. You could tell it was a pharmacy, but there were no lights on. And it says, "If you are here after hours, ring the bell." So I rang the bell. And I rang the bell, and I was like, "I don't think anybody's coming." Sure enough, this little lady comes out. She opens that little door. She's like, "What is wrong with you?" And we gave her the little prescription. And she comes back, and she doesn't have any penicillin. And she says, "There's a shortage all over Europe. You'll be lucky if you get this at all." So, I took Claire, I said, "I will get you penicillin tomorrow, but we're going for ice cream right now." So, like at midnight, we went for ice cream. It was a lot of fun. So, we can laugh about it now. Bonding experience is riding bicycles in Amsterdam. We were in over our heads here. Mommy was homesick with a stomach bug this day, and she would have definitely vetoed this. But we did it, and Laura did crash. She crashed into a pedestrian, ripped her pants. It was traumatic. We just took a breather and went and saw the Van Gogh Museum. But again, now we kind of laugh at it. But not an experience for the faint of heart. I don't know if anybody's been to Amsterdam before and seen those crazy people. Yeah. Okay. And, because you do Airbnbs and you're on a budget, you can make your own food. And you can go grocery shopping in local grocery stores. So we did this a lot. And every place we went, we just made our own spaghetti. We had like a rotation of 4 things: fajitas, spaghetti, what the other thing? I can't remember. What? Tacos, yeah. And so anyways, it was a lot of fun. So that was bonding for us, reconnecting. Refocus, that's the last thing. So refocus as I come back in. Like what is God placing on my heart? Where do I feel ministry may focus for me over the next several years? This was the bulletin, believe it or not, from the German church where we worshiped. That was it. This is that's Lucas 15, 1 through 3. That's the lesson that day was the parable of the prodigal son. That little QR code is the bulletin. So you get out your phone, you scan the QR code, and the bulletin would come up on your phone, like the hymns and everything. And I was like, Martin Luther lives again. Like, always on the vanguard, I was like, we're going to do this here at Epiphany. QR code for the bulletin. And we'll have other paper bulletins too. Places I worshiped on Sabbatical. St. Peter's Lutheran Church in Shenandoah, Virginia. It's up in the valley, one of the oldest churches. Had a wonderful worship there. Got to hear one of my colleagues preach, the pastor of the church there. We went to St. Stephen's Episcopal Church because my colleague is John Roars, the rector there. So the Sunday before we left for Europe, we worshiped there. That was kind of on the other end of the spectrum. It was Prediger Kirche, the preacher church in Erfurt, Germany. We worshipped as a family. They all said, we want to worship in Germany. And I said, well, it's all going to be in German. And they said, we're okay with that. And I said, well, I got to find a Lutheran church. It just happened that the church right next to our Airbnb was the Prediger Kirche, which means preacher church. That's just its name. It's one of the very first churches to adopt Luther's reforms in 1525. And has been Lutheran ever since. Meister Eckhart, who was a medieval theologian before, like three centuries before Luther, this was his church. So it's a famous church. I didn't realize all this when I walked in, that we would be worshiping at the Prediger Kirche. And it just so happened that the Sunday we were there, I was walking in with my family, and I'm used to worshiping in Germany, and nobody goes to church. But there were all these people streaming into the church. And it's like, this is not normal. Something's going on here this morning. Maybe there's a famous speaker or something's going on. Well, as I walked in, I could hear American English being spoken by a lot of these people. So we went in, and there was a choir over on the side, and I was like, something special is going on here today with this choir. I'm going to go find out. So I went outside because I'm an extrovert and I'll talk to complete strangers. And I butted in and I said, I hear you sound like you're speaking English, American English to me. And they're like, yeah, we're a group from Chicago. We're here today. And I said, oh, what are you doing? Well, all of our spouses are in the choir there. Okay, what choir is it? Well, it's a Bach choir from Grace Lutheran Church in Chicago, Illinois. And I said, really? I said, I'm an ELCA pastor. And this woman goes, I am too! And there were like 4 Lutheran pastors, and the coup de grace was the conductor went to seminary with me. And they were like, what seminary did you go to? I said, Southern. He said, Michael Costello went to Southern. He's our conductor. I said, Michael? I haven't seen Michael in 20 years. And he's in this church in Germany at the same time as me. So I wanted to play for you real quick kind of what they sounded like. That was really special. So to be in that space with that music and people that or connected to me. We worshiped, of course, at my friend's church in Colorado Springs. It's our seminary classmates and their family. Went to Lord of the Valley Lutheran Church, ELCA, in Granby, and they choose one Sunday every year that they worship outside, and it's 4th of July Sunday. And so with Purple Mountain Majesties literally behind the altar, we got to worship with this just a delightful congregation. We had about 50 people on folding chairs outside. I mean, I felt like kindred spirits with this guy because halfway through his sermon, his PA system just went out. It happens everywhere! So they just got all good guitar. It was just wonderful. Turns out Margaret had to go to the hospital, and she needed, for the rest of the trip, a wheelchair to participate with us. And I called him, Brian Bergam is his name, and he said, oh, we have a wheelchair you can borrow. So I went to go. I got to talk to him like 3 times. He retired August 4th. And he asked me some questions. I said, no, I feel called. I don't have a place. But, books I read during this time, I tried to do 3, but I didn't get around to all the 3 I chose. Countercultural by Gil Rendell, as a Methodist pastor, Subversive Resistance in the Neighborhood Congregation. And The Pastor in a Secular Age by Lutheran Andrew Root, Ministry to People Who No Longer Need a God. I initially thought maybe we could read these in a group or something, but they're not the best for that. They have really good points, though. And just to summarize, Gil Rendell says, we live in a very divisive time. I think we know that. Very nihilistic time. Not just politically, but you name it. Nihilism, just that there is really no good future. We are in a very individualistic time, hyper-individualism. And the congregation, specifically the Christian congregation, although he does kind of include other faiths that congregate, he said, is like the last place where people can be together and work for a common good outside of themselves. All of the rest of the things are falling away. And so, in a very real way, a congregation is subversive, is countercultural. Very different from what the rest. So he's like, hang in there, don't try to grow, just be the church, just love one another. I did read The Hunchback of Notre Dame because I wanted to read it, kind of identify with the main character. He's trapped in a church. I wanted to get out and see what he, and it was really good. Love that book. Has anybody ever read The Hunchback of Notre Dame? The Disney's okay, nothing like the real book. Way good. The last thing I kind of want to end on is where my brain kept going so much is vocation. I loved to talk to people and learn about what they do. I love to do it now. I've loved to do it before sabbatical, but on sabbatical, it became something I just gravitated towards. I told you a little bit about the paragliding experience over the Lauterbrunnen Valley. The gentleman that was my pilot was this guy named Jonathan. I can't remember his last name right now. Jonathan's about my age. He lives with 2 little kids and his wife in Switzerland on that mountainside. And he does this for a living. Like, this is his vocation, is he gives people joy and thrill. And he loves to do it. He loves his work. And the best part of the paragliding was, for me, was not the views or the silence or the beauty of it. It was talking to him. I ran my mouth the whole time. Because I would tell me, how did you get interested? How did you learn to do this? Why do you keep doing it? He was the one who gave me the idea. Of course, now I look back and realize, he was like, when you're in Amsterdam, definitely ride bikes. Well, he's kind of a thrill seeker, kind of like on the internet guy. But really enjoyed just talking with him and learning more about him. And when we got back, I ended up sending him a thank you note. I found out his address there. The Saturday we were in Beaune, I woke up really early, still a little jet lagged. There's a Saturday market that sets up in Beaune, and all of the surrounding merchants and farmers, it's like a farmer's market on steroids, and it's just wonderful. They're selling everything you can think of just out there every Saturday. The restaurateurs come out and buy their produce there that they're going to use the rest of the week. So I was just walking around watching all of these vendors set up their tables. And there was, in the middle of it, was this guy, two guys, on a pop-up coffee cart. And I was like, oh, I need some coffee. So I went up to them, and they weren't finished setting it up. But I said, can I have some coffee? So, well, I can't make any drip for you, but I can make a café au lait. And I said, I'll be fine. You're not French. He said, no, I'm from Boston. And I said, why are you here in this little town selling coffee? And his answer was, because this market needs good coffee. Wow. It wasn't exactly the answer I was going for, but it made me think. So I drank, it was the best coffee I've ever had. Walked around, turned my little cup back in. It was a little piece of pottery he had made. And I started talking to him more while he's like talking to all of these people in French. And I said, what are you doing here? Like, why are you, I know it's good coffee. And he said, well, I actually run a little coffee shop. I'm an artist by profession, but I run a coffee shop in Saint-Romain, which is the next village over, small. I said, why are you in Saint-Romain? And he said, because it's the most beautiful village you've ever seen. Again, I was thinking it's like my wife's from there or something like that. It just made me think about beauty and joy and the vocation that we all bear from God to share in the goodness of God's creation. As a sabbatical message, I really came back with vocation. How can we each enjoy the beauty around us and then participate and contribute? I sent him a thank you note too, and I just said, I sent him a note, so I wrote like a letter, and I just said, you may not remember me, one of those random Saturdays in Bone, I got coffee for me and my kids. I said that I've been noodling on those two answers you gave me for a while, and what God might be calling me to do, and how I can cherish beauty and joy in what I do, and the people I serve. And I got the letter back from him this week. And I thought I'd read it to you. This is what I close with. Dear Phillip, please forgive my glib responses to you at the market that Saturday. I remember clearly, and it was busy. I tried to be more kind, but at that moment I was lacking. But there is truth to what I said. Haha. Thanks so much for your card, your thoughts, your words. I'm very touched and happy to now be in contact with a new friend. For many years, I made paintings. And while I loved so much about it, I didn't like how egotistical it was. I mean, what does it really actually do for anybody? Well, many years later, and with a heartbroken sentiment towards humans in general, I think that the arts are so important. Through the arts, humans communicate beauty. We communicate our musings and inspirations. Just like how you sent me a letter on a card with a beautiful sunset over the Blue Ridge Mountains, and thereby shared with me so much more than just your words. I think a lot about where we are going, and I teach my children the importance of finding, seeing, and hearing beauty, and the real importance of sharing it in a personal, unique way. I hope your travels were inspiring. Matt. That is my sabbatical. If there's anything I can answer in 30 seconds, I'd be happy. Yes, Gwen.
When are you going to offer us a tour?
Oh, well, it's funny you say that. I would like to get into maybe taking congregation groups on tours. Maybe Luther Land. I think Holy Land is a little off limits right now. And maybe a pilgrimage on the Santiago, Camino de Santiago or something. Yeah. Good. Any others?